Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for this national event for Cicada by Tech23. Tech23 is Australia's longest running and biggest deep tech festival, and we're absolutely thrilled to be coming together to continue to celebrate radical innovation and shine a spotlight on some amazing, incredible alumni of the Tech23 community to inspire you not only about their journey, but also on how you can get involved. My name's Sally Ann Williams, and I'm the CEO of Cicada Innovations. As we start the event today, I just want to acknowledge the traditional custodians on the land on which we work, live and play. For me today, I'm joining you from the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. And I acknowledge that continuing connection to country and care for country, both here and across Australia. And to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today, I pay my respects to you and really delighted that you can be here. For those of us joining us online now, if you wanted to pop into the chat which land you're joining us from, please feel free to do so. It's just great to acknowledge the custodians of the land on which we're joining. So a little bit about Cicada Innovations for those of you who may be joining us for the first time today. We're Australia's oldest and largest deep tech incubator. As you can see behind me, this is our original site here in Sydney at South Everleigh, where we host about 50 businesses solving some of the most pressing problems in the world in energy, in food, in health, all doing things that have radical engineering solutions at their heart of it, but have passion, commitment, dedication and resilience in the founders and teams that bring those businesses to fruition, to life. At Cicada, we've had a really long history over the last 23 years and supported hundreds of businesses throughout these doors. We've helped them raise over $1.7 billion of dollars. There's been a couple of exits, over $1.4 billion. But what I'm more excited about is so many of our alumni companies, including the alumni residents that we're going to be talking to today, are going on in their mission and their vision and thriving in the world around us. So Tech23, for those of you who don't know, is Australia's longest running festival in deep tech. And we are the proud custodians of Tech23, passing on the baton from Rachel Slattery this year, who's passed that to us to take it forward. Tech23 is an incredible event. It has been showcasing deep tech founders before deep tech was a thing. Some of our notable alumni include of Tech23, Canva, Airwallex, Morse Micro, Prospection, Myriota, Propeller, Fleet, Movis, and of course, Regrow. And we're really delighted. Cicada Innovations actually calls many of those our alumni too, because they've been residents here with us and been part of our programs for many, many years. But rather than tell you about what we're going to be doing with Tech23 this year, which is going to be in July, and we're really excited to showcase 23 new radical innovators across Australia, let me just play a short video to show you what we're all about. Fantastic. I hope you're excited about that opportunity and what it looks like. And if you out there are a radical innovator in the deep tech sector, or you know someone who is, it's not too late to apply. So please head on over to our website to register to be one of the Tech23, because we really want to hear from you. It gives me great pleasure for this event that we're having, this national online event and actually international event today, to shine a spotlight on somebody who is probably one of the most amazing, gracious, resilient leaders that I have met. I've known her for a very, very, very long time, and today I'm welcoming her home virtually, as she's still based in the USA. But it's my absolute privilege and delight to spend the next hour or so talking to Anastasia Volkova, the incredible founder and CEO of Regrow. She's an alumni of Tech23. She's an alumni of Cicada. She's a generous leader. She's a thoughtful leader, and she's a very wise woman. So Anastasia, it's fantastic to have you with us. Thank you so much for making the time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I bet everyone is wondering why they couldn't just come and see you and get that nibbles in the room downstairs. Well, it's because Anastasia is still not back. So Sally's hosting you online.
And we've got a bit of a habit of doing this every year or two over the last couple of years with COVID. But what's been really phenomenal, Anastasia, is even though we might be far apart, you're never very far from our hearts, because your name gets thrown up around the Cicada hallways all of the time. And Regrow gets mentioned, or Fluorosat, as you were before the merger, gets mentioned all of the time because of the phenomenal work that you've done. So I'm so delighted that we can do a bit of a time travel today with you and unpack some of that history, some of the inspiration of, you know, your foundation and where you started from, but more importantly, then get into what's happening now and the future and the impact that you're going to bring. So thank you for your generosity in joining us. And for anybody that's got questions for Anastasia today, please pop them into the Q&A function, and I will keep an eye on them and do my best to kind of weave those into the conversation as we go as best I can. Because as I say, she's a gracious woman with lots of wisdom, lots of insight, and incredibly frank and direct, I think, as well, in her advice giving, which I always appreciate, because that is a bit of a kindred spirit right there. So let's get into it. So Anastasia, you have done so much. If I read your biography, we'd be here in 15 minutes talking about, you know, MIT's 35 under 35 innovators, top Australian 100 Australian innovators. Regrow is one of the world's most innovative companies recently. You've worked with, you know, some of the largest agricultural producers around the world. But let's take a trip back to the past. Let's go back to 2017. You just left the stage at Tech23. You'd pitched into a room full of investors and people in the deep tech ecosystem. And it was actually Fluorosat that you were pitching then. What was your vision you were pitching, and what did it feel like coming off the stage? Can you tell us a little bit about where the business was at, where you were at, and what you were hoping to achieve, and whether you felt like you landed there or not?
The business was not even 1 year old. It was idea and passion that coalesced around the area of climate impact in agriculture, trying to bring into alignment the desire to manage land in a way that doesn't mess with planetary boundaries, and trying to understand how to tie it into a business with the business model. Having pitched on stage, I remember the story I was telling like it was yesterday. I remember how it felt. The story didn't change. There's different ways to tell the story, Sally, and you know this. As a founder, sometimes maybe the macro story is so big that people are finding it hard to relate, but everyone roughly understands that about a quarter of the world's greenhouse gases comes from agriculture, so there must be something wrong with the way we're managing the land. So maybe that's a solution, because in principle, it sounds like agriculture could work in collaboration with the planet and with nature, not necessarily opposite. So that's the macro story. That was not the story I was coming into Tech23 with. I took the micro story. I took the personal story about the cotton farmer in Moree, just north of Sydney in New South Wales, talking about how they have to make decisions, what information they have to support their decisions when they need to apply fertilizer to the crop or make one of the other 38 decisions across the growing season that really they don't have a very good information to guide, yet everyone seems to have appetite for judging how they make those decisions based on the outcome. As having stepped off that stage, it was the first time I met some of the people that now you and I can call for coffee anytime, many, many years later. It was the first time I saw some of the main sequence partners. It was the first time I saw Alan Jones. It was the first time I saw so many people that are crucial to Australian startup ecosystem for absolutely the first time. And they didn't know if I were to stick around. I had Patra Andren, who was the previous CEO of Cicada, really by my side, encouraging me to go and just keep pushing until I find something that sticks from the business model perspective, from the right kind of customer fit perspective. The problem hasn't changed. Even the solution hasn't changed much. The business model evolved and we brought so many more stakeholders to the table. But at the core, we're still solving that problem with the different incentives around the table, with the different regulation, with compliance, with big businesses involved now. And I'm glad we're here. I'm glad that this problem is getting the attention that it needs to. I wouldn't say that anything that I said back then would really be different from what I would say now.
I love that reflection that things haven't changed, but the business model and the ability to actually deliver on that, really. And what you're talking about with your business model is adoption and people sort of engaging in it. And that does lead to that impact, but actually the vision hasn't changed. Unpack for a little bit, only being 1 year old, did you have a product in market yet, or were you still in the design and the building phase? What were some of the conversations that you had sort of on the day and then following sort of Tech23 that just help you kind of take that and take that sort of experience on that day of telling the story of the Moree farmer and really turning that sort of into that establishment phase of really validating and honing in on that? What are some of the things that happened for you and some of the lessons that you learned along the way?
We started pretty early in terms of pushing the product prototype into the market and really iterating on it with real customers. It's truly one of the pieces of advice that I give continuously every time I'm asked for a piece of advice for a really early stage founder. Really find that ideal customer profile, find 30 people who fit that customer profile, ask them that question, ask them, the key question is, what keeps you up at night? And if the thing that you're going to be working on is not one of the top 2 or 3 things, probably you will keep looking for your ideal customer profile, but maybe if it's featured within the 3 or 5 of things that keeps them up at night, they could be a good support for you. So we already had that initial feedback on what I would say was a very basic prototype of just 3 of our functions. Let alone, all of the modules of all of the products we have on the platform now that feed into each other in terms of decision-making support for farmers and corporates that source from them. The time at Tech23 was really about asking the question, seeing the response from the audience. Is there investor appetite? Is there partner appetite? Are there people who are interested in hearing the story a bit more, mentoring me, mentoring the team, and helping us get on a journey to where we were trying to go? Because it's at that point in time, I want to emphasize, because I hope that I will normalize it for everyone who wants to apply and be part of it this July. At that stage, you don't really know what the company will look like, what the product will look like, but you can imagine the future in which you want the world to live. And if you think that future resonates with people, and that's just being in love with solving the problem, in love with solving the problem and envisaging the future where the problem doesn't exist, I think that winding road that will take you from where you stand on that stage to where that future will exist, you don't have to predict the how. You don't have to predict the how you get there. But I think it's important to latch onto that future and recruit people to be along the way with you, whether they'll be joining your team as investors, as mentors, as partners. That's what we were doing that day, and getting a lot of feedback on my ability to pitch, my ability to tell the story concisely, articulate the business opportunity. Why is this something that someone will invest in? I remember that. Yeah, all those things.
So what you probably don't know is I actually remember you on stage there. So, because I've been to, I think, nearly every single Tech23, And I do remember you pitching, and I think the thing that shone through for me was both the articulation, you're very articulate, but was the passion for the problem that you were really trying to solve and that end space. So big, bold step. Could you give us that 30-second sort of elevator pitch for those in the room sort of now of what you would say, and let some of that passion for what you do shine through? Because I think it is a real strength to getting people to buy in and be like, I've got to talk to her about this. She's so committed. There's such vision here. No pressure, but.
Do you want the Regrow now or Regrow or Fluorescent Regrow 2017?
Let's do the 2017 one, and then we might go on a journey to the future.
Great.
We'll get you to pitch.
Let's do this.
The now one, because I think it's a great metaphor, or it's a great narrative for what you were saying earlier about some things change, but some things don't.
Yes. Did you know that an average cotton farmer would use up to 800 kilos of nitrogen fertilizer on a hectare of cotton crop in some of the best years? Why are they doing it? If fertilizer is so expensive, they are trying to protect their yields. What do we also know about fertilizer? Then when it's overused, it can cause really damaging environmental effects to water quality downstream, even to other plants that will be planted in the area. So why are the farmers doing it if they want to pass the land to the future generations? Or simply they don't know how much fertilizer the plant needs at that moment because it's in any way not obvious. What is the status quo? It can take a couple of leaves, send it to the lab, wait for a couple of days. Is that even an option when they need to apply before the common irrigation cycle? No, it is not. How can we help them? We at Fluorescent employ the remote sensing satellite imagery that helps us see the status of nitrogen availability in the crop before you can see it with the naked eye, and employ the modeling of crop cycles that helps us understand what is the yield potential so you can make the prescribe the precise recommendation of amount of nitrogen on that field. Better even, not doing this in person in the field one by one, we can help agronomists that manage 30,000 hectares each do this for all of their farms just at the time when they need the application recommendations the most, reducing the loss of fertilizer, reducing the cost, yet keeping that insurance and the protection of the crop with precise analytics. We're delivering it via software, and we're starting our first pilot with 30 growers in Murray-Narrabri region of Australia this summer, something like that.
Amazing. I mean, seriously, I still get blown away by your passion, but also the story, right? People, planet, prosperity, no brainer. Shut up and take my money. It's incredible. How big was the team then? And did you have those 30 pilots locked in, or was that coming?
Yeah, no, I went to Murray-Narrabri very early on. In terms of 30 pilot growers, it came from, a sub-selection of 30 pilot agronomists that each had growers. And we enrolled those key agronomists, and one of them decided to invest, and that helped to convert some of our current long-standing supporting investors. But of course, in that stage, it was still an idea, and hoping to get some money to get it going with a little MVP grant, a little more something that will be matched funding from government, maybe if we can raise it from customers. And yeah.
How big was the team when you were on the Tech23 stage?
I so small, like five, seven people. Yeah, like 5 to 7 people, including me. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to take a giant leap, and then we're going to connect the dots between the two timeframes. So if we fast forward to today, how many people? You said 120, 140?
40, yeah.
People there, give or take, on the team. So the company now operates in how many countries around the world? Have you got customers?
We have users in the product is used in 45 countries around the world. We of course have concentration in some key countries. Our employees are in 17 countries.
Wow.
So it's another good stat. Yeah.
And how many acres? I remember there's a stat that you talk about measuring how many sort of acres that are farmed in various things. What does the product look like? How many acres are kind of under
Yeah, monitoring.
Observation, monitoring, whatever's the front
Exactly.
all of those things. What's that kind of that? Because that's quite a large number.
500 million hectares now, so 1.2 billion acres. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. And so you had three aspects to the product back then, and how many things are in the product suite now? Like, what is it? What is the full stack of that you can do?
Yeah, there's not just, 3 tools you can use within one product. There's now 3 products that are targeted to different buyers and stakeholders. One is more to the farmer, one is more to the agronomist, the regional one, and one is more to the corporate sustainability procurement R&D team to kind of help connect them to the supply chain. And each of them have so many tools and scalable setups that you need 140 people to run this company to the next stage and next stage, satisfying the customer needs that are emerging. Yeah.
It's so incredible, because it is 6-7 years, we were talking earlier, 6 or 7 years that you've been in business. So it's an incredible growth story. I know that, that seems, for some people that can seem slow, but I think for others that's incredibly fast for deep tech when we consider a lot of people it takes well over a decade. What have been some of the key sort of learnings that you've had along the way that you think that have surprised you maybe, or that were unexpected?
I would say the most surprising learning that I hope will be useful for founders and entrepreneurs on the call today is something that Petra Andren taught me so early on. She sat me down on the board table at Cicada and she told me, Anastasia, who are your priority buyers? Like, who are the most important people for your business? And I said, Petra, agronomists. Right answer, not investors. Not whoever else talks to you, it's your customers. So what are we going to do to get you to where you need to be in this business in the next stage? And I started listing some nonsense operational road mapping, and Petra just said, no, whatever it takes. What are we going to do? Whatever it takes. Who are your people? Your customers. And I think what surprised me is just how true that is. Continues to be true, and I think will be forever true. It doesn't mean that you don't build a product company or a platform company and you just, build a consultancy that builds everything for your customers, but it's truly understanding how to bring them on the journey, how to kind of get this 80-20 rule. Sometimes if something's not working, there's no rule that says you can't pick up the phone and call your customer and explain it, because that's how you build trust and transparency. That's what the definition, the operationalized definition of whatever it takes became to me. Like if something's not working with the technology, I can go and fix it. Like if it's an in-person hardware, you need to be there. You need to show the skin in the game. In the early stages, we all have so much skin in the game, all of the skin in the game, of course, but we still sometimes get stuck on, as founders, oh, maybe it's not proper, or maybe that's not how investors want to see it, or maybe that's not what I'm supposed to do, or where's the manual? Like, how do people do this? It's actually, well, there is no. The rule is there is no rule. Like you'll write the playbook. It's your business, and this business is so probably disruptive because you're building the market with it, and that means that it's really best you can do is pattern match to see what have they done in the similar market. What can we learn? Yes, but if you're truly innovative, it's going to take time to build the product, build the business, build the customer advocacy, build the market, and you need to know that you can just channel all of that energy into propelling it forward, and it will eventually get there with a lot of tenacity.
Yeah, a lot of tenacity. I do remember, there's frequent number of years I remember where you feel like it's incremental growth in small stages. And then all of a sudden, the last couple of years for you have been really, really, really big, right? You've had a merger, Fluorosat is now Regrow. You've raised 38 million Series B, I think it was last year.
US. Yeah.
US. So yeah, lots more. Do the math, everybody. I haven't looked at what the rate is today.
60 something.
So that's says the founder. Number 1 world's most innovative company in agriculture in Fast Company's list. you know, could you have imagined back in 2017 that that was kind of the pathway forward? And what's that kind of journey in those last couple, like those last 2 years really been like? Because that's a huge thing to bring two organizations together, to take over, to take on a rebrand, you know, take on the growth that you've done. What's that been like?
Yeah, I think there's definitely an inflection point, and the way that we've built was this inflection point. I think the story. Allow me just a few minutes of the story, because I think it'll make a lot of sense if I put it this way. So we had the right technology to solve for decision support, but we didn't quite have the right technology to incentivize the true benefactor of that benefit of that decision to be part of the value chain. And with COVID, with supply chain disruptions, Ukrainian war, I'm sure we'll get into at some point. As a Ukrainian, for everyone who doesn't know, I'm Ukrainian. All of those things and shocks in the system that have really highlighted that everyone needs to come to the table to solve for climate resilience, especially in agriculture. So it can't be farmers and people around them solving. Most everyone who's buying from them in multiple parts of the supply chain just kind of sits and waits for them. The public and investors and institutional investors have put a lot of expectations and pressure on corporates and brands. We expect them to take climate action. We expect them to invest towards net zero, them to really propel this new future by exercising their demand power back into the supply chain. And that's where it clicked for Regrow, because through the merger, we brought together the Fluorosat agronomic decision support, which is a fancy language for how do you manage crops, and Dagon, that had the soil carbon modeling, the emissions modeling out of agriculture. Combining these two pieces, we now could see what's good for the farmer, but also what's good for the planet. And all those stakeholders could suddenly coalesce around the true cost accounting of those pieces. And so we, within the 2 years after the merger, actually within a year, even 6 months, we've launched the combined products, one to the farmer for decision support and enrollment into programs, where they would get agronomic support that will share, look, I think on your farm in these conditions, here are the options that you could reduce or better the environmental footprint, which ones would you consider? And then bring the corporate to the table to underwrite that transition financially. On the other hand, to have the corporate have the aggregated anonymized view, the data from farmers doesn't directly contribute to it. It's our modeling at large scale that's showing that if you're sourcing in this region in the world versus this region in the world, what does that do to your corporate emissions profile? Like, how does that make you better or worse corporate citizen? What are the opportunities to invest in those areas to lower your emissions profile? So we could finally tie that front of the supply chain with the downstream part towards the consumer of the supply chain and create a really resilient business model. And I often call the whole team just cracks laughing when I say it, but it's a chocolate fountain, right? Because on one hand, you have the farmer really benefits in contributing the data that allows them to be paid more, that contributes to building our model, that then powers large scale decision making for corporates that can help prioritize decisions to invest on farm. And it goes both ways, bettering but protecting them. There's like a firewall in between, with us being the third party that doesn't expose them to each other directly. And yeah, post-merger, I can say, Sally, that, you know, even with the merger, with the rebrand, with the positioning as the monitoring, management, reporting, verification system, it's like a fancy another term in our industry, MRV, that says, how do you know how much you pay someone for climate action on the farm? How do you know it's true? How do you know for sure? How sure? So we've established that category, and we were peddling before anyone else saw the wave emerging. And as you remember, that was during the outbreak of COVID. When it all happened, we were all, you know, hunkered down, and I'm like, well, now is the time. The wave is coming. Let's battle. And it happened. It was just really great. And then now we're riding it and catching the next one, and hopefully getting the rest of the industry to do the same.
it's incredible to hear you articulate the vision in that way. And I do love the chocolate fountain analogy because I think people can see that visually, right? And for me, that's incredibly powerful because I can imagine, and I guess this is the question that I want to ask, have you seen on that corporate side of corporates, are they starting to change their behavior and really go, we actually need to think about buying somewhere different? And is that forcing then downstream into farmers? Are you seeing that sort of circular changes in behavior happening? And if so, which side is kind of leading that change cycle?
Great question. We're definitely seeing it. We have a number of customers that have adopted both products, a number of customers that are close to or early on the second product, whichever was their first that they adopted. We definitely see this cycle because after they understand their inventory of their emissions, they can invest and then they can effectively claim corporate benefit of that investment in their corporate reporting, which helps them build a future business case to invest even more. And they keep growing on it like a spiral. Which part is leading? I would say the growers are really seeking it. But in most really large markets, it's the buy side that comes to the table. It's the corporates that say, we have a 2025 goal for emission reduction, 2030 goal for emission reduction. We really cannot wait. And farming is the business in which you need to try things for a few years on a smaller scale until you get to a full adoption percentage. And it's great, but it means corporates need to start with many farmers so they can all comfortably try, so they can all get to scale by the time it's really time to get to scale. Otherwise, they'll have to report to their shareholders and all of us buying their products on the supermarket shelves or getting it plated in front of us at restaurants that, well, that brand didn't really meet their commitment because they took too long thinking about it, or they didn't have the right information to prioritize. And truly, it's transformational for them to get this information. It's unprecedented. Corporates that work with agri-food supply chain have never before been able to see maps of production from emissions and productivity standpoint in a way that would connect their suppliers and what they're producing with their corporate emissions. So I think they have really a lot of powerful information now to coalesce around into organizations, and they're truly transforming their entire organizations, hiring new people, changing bonus structures, aligning everything with it. Climate disclosures are coming just like new financial reporting, and they will be actually done together. It's very serious. Finally.
It's incredible, right? Like what you're talking about really is being at a very unique position and a really powerful position where you're actually able to drive behavioral change inside of in both sides of the market of how they're doing business, incentivizing incentive schemes on both sides, from these essentially these two products that you've brought to market, which is really unique, right? We don't see this elsewhere. We often see it sort of in the social impact space, but not necessarily in a corporation or a for-profit business, but you're balancing both. And there's some really interesting question sort of in here. I'm going to paraphrase that's come up in the Q&A a little bit about that, about, how do you balance that, creating that social impact through enterprise and the commercial and business model sort of needs with the drive for measuring and achieving the social impact goals and those environmental goals that you have? Because I think that's, we often see companies and they're really focused on one or the other, but you're really doing both, if I'm hearing you right, which is incredible.
Correct. And to us, it's very credible because it is one and the same. We stand for resilience of the supply chain. If we're not providing data that encourages to make decisions that make the supply chains more resilient tomorrow, it means the whole industry or pieces of it, piece by piece, will go out of business. No one really needs this to happen. The even worst case scenario is that we are going to take some land out of production because we haven't managed it well, and are going to convert some other land, most likely forest, most likely in a tropical country, into productive land for agriculture. And those emissions are higher than any emissions on actively producing land. So we cannot afford for that to happen. Everyone understands we cannot afford to fall forests. So to the question of alignment of these values and incentives, let me step you through it, because to me, it's just so crystal clear and obvious. So maybe it'll be obvious to everyone listening to us and watching us today as well. So what does a farm need? They need profits. They usually have very thin margins. They need to be paid, not just for what they produce and ship as a commodity. They need to be paid to produce environmental benefits, or we call them ecosystem outcomes. So if a farm contributes with their practices to cleaner water, that will mean the municipality will not need to install the filtration plant that costs billions of dollars. What does that mean, and who can band together, municipality, brand, nonprofit, to actually pay that farmer, either for the transition costs, because in the long run, what we're talking about is called regenerative agriculture, kind of more self-sustainable methods of farming that protect the soil health, protect biodiversity, invest in diversified rotations. So once the farmer adopts the practices and practices in a couple of years, they actually see a lot of benefits to their P&L, to their bottom line. They see the reduced cost of the reduced amount of fertilizer needed because their soil is regenerated. They see better water retention that helps them with the yield in years that are a bit more stressful from the climate perspective, a bit more dry. So the midterm economics for the farm make a lot of sense. You invest in the near term for the transition, or you can invest in the long term into a lower carbon intensity commodity. So you're getting wheat that is more climate positive. And there are brands that are interested in that, either in paying for the transition or to paying for the commodity that will demonstrate that they as a brand are climate neutral, for example. They will put it on pack where you all can pick it up in supermarket. So that's farmer perspective. So you can see how the farmer incentives are not divergent at all. They're very aligned. What is the business model? And there's a question in the chat that seems to try to poke at something, which is very cute. Obviously, we have a solid business model given we've scaled as a business. So the business model is subscription for software that enables to make these decisions either on the corporate side as one subscription, and then effectively to the to a corporate again, but around the program for the farm. So a corporation that wants to reduce their emissions, that wants to understand their emissions baseline and then reduce them by implementing a program with the farm, would pay Regrow a subscription fee based on a per hectare basis, whether it's the monitoring or implementing programs on farm. So effectively, think of Regrow as a Stripe transaction fee in some way, just not in the physical world of money, but in the natural capital evaluation on farms, where we don't transact anything. The money goes to the farmer from a corporate, but we provide them the common language of evaluating these benefits, monitoring them, verifying.
Yeah. I love it. I'm more in love with the business now than I think I ever was, because I think you've got the both sides to it now. And I think that's just so incredibly exciting to me. And I can see, really do hope there is actually some people out there working in adjacent areas around modern slavery and others that could see you need to have these both sides to really actually drive change. And what I really love is, I always talk about people, planet, prosperity, and they're not mutually exclusive. And you really, Regrow really personifies that. It's not mutually exclusive. It's just people or planet. We need to feed people, but we also need to care for the planet because we can't feed the people otherwise. And there's no reason that you can't make money from doing that, because you're providing something of value, to your customers on both sides of the table, which is fantastic. If I think about Regrow now and, some of your priorities, what are some of the big things that you're really excited about in the sort of near-term horizon of the next year or two that you're kind of just going, this is what is super exciting and everybody just needs to know about, that I can tell you?
Yes, of course. We're expanding with programs internationally, so it's very exciting to not just monitor areas around the world, but truly launch programs by having recruited customers that are paying farmers to change, and therefore truly taking out the tons of carbon out of the atmosphere, sequestering it or abating the emissions so that don't happen in the first place, the combination of the two. We are launching several programs in Brazil this year. We're expanding our programs in Europe. We are launching several new supply chains, going beyond cropping, beyond commodity that is grown. We're going into dairy and beef with monitoring products, but also with on-farm programming. Because if you look at the pie chart of the emissions coming from agriculture, that animal sector, it's not standalone, right? People need to understand that you grow a lot of food to actually feed the livestock and not feed the people. This is why we have a burgeoning alternative protein market, because of that connectivity. But Regrow is now connecting the dots and really is able to bring some of the science that has been worked on for decades. Finally, we started getting really more granular data from trials, from customers, to really bring it to the fore and be able to help bring to market some of the new feed additives, for example, that will make the reduction in livestock farming emissions more possible, and really excited about those supply chains. Of course, we've launched programs in Australia, so in livestock supply chains. So those are my dimensions of growth.
It's exciting. How have you, over the years, like you've talked about a lot of growth and there's a lot of new products and there's a lot of things you built to market. How have you, what has changed for you around where you seek advice? And this is just based on a little question that I see in the Q&A, but what has changed for you over the years about the type of advice you seek? Who do you seek advice from now? Is it your board? Do you have a set of people? Do you evolve that over time? Because there's so many different phases of things that you've had to learn on your journey, both as a founder and an executive and a chief executive, but also in terms of, the business and managing people. And there's just a huge amount of complexity that people don't think about, I think, sometimes when they become a CEO of all of the things that you need to develop. Where have you how do you help get support and help you in that journey and decision making and guidance and things like that?
Great question, Celine. I would say everyone has their own learning style. So I guess listen to yours. My learning style is that I want to come a little prepared, at least a little prepared. So I read. I like that. And now there is books like The Great CEO Within, Startup CXO, Startup CEO, Startup CXO by my friend Matt Blumberg. The Hard Thing About Hard Things about Ben Horowitz. So you can read those 3 titles and you will get a pretty good idea of at what stage would you do with your team, with your executives. What is your role? How does that role change? What does a founder journey look like? So that's on one hand. On the other hand, books don't give tailored advice to your specific situation. And the people who are with you on the journey, I've always thought about recruiting investors and recruiting customers, just like we recruit for regrowers on the team. And I've sought advice from them consistently. I was always looking for those partners that helped us with relevant translatable experience that they had, and I had before recruiting them or taking their checks or anything like that, proven that they could be thought partners. And I think that was really, really important. I mean, you guys at Cicada and Tech23 historically has done so much in vetting who are the investors who really can come to the table and be the support for the founders that are builders, and help them as part of their portfolio to really learn the skills that otherwise no one tells you how to run the first board meeting. Well, at Cicada they can tell you. That's where I learned it.
And things evolve on the journey. So it's I've got to say, just a personal reflection, because me, I end up personal in these chats. I forget everybody else is watching, and I just end up with the coffee catch-up.
Just two of us.
But yeah, exactly. But like I see, if I think about you on that stage, if I think about you when I first met you in the first few years, and I wasn't here then, I was still in my Google days, to the last, couple of years, moving to the US, and the founder that I see in front of me and the CEO I see in front of me, I see such an evolution. as a leader. But what I would say, it's not this radical uplift of skills or capabilities because they've always been there in you, but like a real refinement and a real strength coming through in you today in just a way that is so present. Like I don't know if that comes through or you recognize that in yourself, but there's such a what I would say is sort of like a strong but quietly confident stand that you are appearing with today. So just commend you for that, for one. It's quite incredible to see and to watch. And I see a wisdom emanating coming out of you in how you're communicating so thoughtfully to people on this call today and giving back and paying it forward into the community. And you've always done that, but in just such a gracious way. So thank you for that. So that's personal observation I just wanted to make, and I'm hoping I don't make anybody uncomfortable, but you know me, I say
yeah, going to make me uncomfortable. I do want to say that I'm very grateful for the early team, the mid team, and the current team, especially my leadership team, as well as my board team that has groomed me, helped me, trained me, gave me feedback, and that really allowed me now to focus, especially my leadership team. They're absolutely incredible. They allow me to focus and be really present here because they are holding the business, they're running it operationally. I can focus on the vision, I can focus on moving the market, I can focus on paving the way, paying it forward. Those are really important things, and someone needs to be focused on them whilst still, doing the incredible things that I love. You asked me pre-call, I'm still building pieces of the future that I wanted to see, and that's so incredibly exciting. I think you really need to find those roles and people around you that will allow you to focus on what gives you most energy. I actually received such fantastic feedback for the board deck. It's my first board meeting on Monday after my new chief of staff joined, and she's former Google. And the board deck with also the new executives looks phenomenal. And I take no credit because they produced it. I helped them with the arc, but every piece of that board deck is our head of partnerships, our CRO, our CMO, our chief of staff, our COO, our head of product. They've really come together and brought it together. And that's the reflection that I'm just so grateful for that. And I know where I've come from, and I remember how it felt 6 years ago. It's different now, and I feel very privileged that they allowed me to be here, our customers that helped us get here. And what gives me confidence is that this is inevitably needing to get done. Like, it's not going away. The next 20, 30 years will be about this work, and it absolutely binary has to turn into a true positive binary, into a one. Just has to be resilient agriculture everywhere.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that reflection and acknowledgement of team. We often focus so much on the founder, and I am going to come back to you at the end and focus a little bit more on you personally, but it is that team, right? You don't get there. No one wins on their own. You win with people around you and in empowering them to lead in their fullest capacity. And, I think you can take great credit in that you've hired brilliant people to be around you, and then you've delegated and given them freedom to fly as well, because that is actually a gracious act of leadership, to actually get the right people in, but then actually let them be them and stand up and take ownership. So it's really incredible to see. I want to just take a quick fast forward, and I want to go beyond 2033. So I might go, say 2040. We'll just go a little bit further out. Sort of, what's Regrow achieved? What do you think is the future state? And what do you think like the headline metrics or the headline sort of thing for everybody to know would be? This is almost asking you to pitch the future again. Maybe it is the current.
Yeah. As I mentioned in just the last thing that I said, this is the inevitable future if we are to exist. So our view of 2040 is that resilient is the new norm for agriculture, that we've paid the debt of extraction that we had exercised since the Second World War, that we have been able to transform our incentive systems, and that the businesses that have paid it into the future have thrived, and that luckily, hopefully, Regrow is the infrastructure of this new agricultural resilience globally, powering this use case, developing new science, because nature is so complex, it's just going to continue to keep going, but delivering farmers the payments all across biodiversity, water quality, additional financial opportunities for them to access, just really favorable finance mechanisms or other purchasing agreements. That we live in a new world where there's digital traceability, yet the protection and privacy exists and coexists at the same time to drive value. And the value is distributed differently, that we as a society have evolved to understand that the food shouldn't cost peanuts, that it should really cost what it should cost, what it does cost to produce it, and that we've kind of shifted our priorities to be paying for the planet to be perpetual, not to be lasting only for this generation. So in 2040, hopefully we're feeling extremely confident about the future of future generations, thanks to the science-empowered decisions that the industry has made.
I love that. I love that vision for the future. And, I share that hope. No pressure, but there's a lot resting on the team's shoulder to help be part of that, to take us there, because we do need it. We do need it. I want to talk into just, we are kind of approaching close to time, but I want to talk a little bit about resilience, because we were chatting earlier before we went live about resilience. And, it's common sort of said, founders need resilience, CEOs need resilience. And in the last couple of years, I feel like everybody's needed even more resilience. You've had some big things going on professionally and personally. How have you sort of managed to kind of navigate that resilience that you've needed in both of the things that you've been sort of working through in your life? We've had a global pandemic. There's obviously, the situation is we still don't have peace in the Ukraine, and that's, I know that weighs heavily on your heart as well, and there's personal implications. Can you share a little bit about it with us, about how you have walked that journey? Because I can only imagine, like we've had somewhat of a shared experience, but there's been with the pandemic, but there's been layers of extra challenges added on for you, and yet you sit before us so gracious and peaceful, which it is a sign of resilience achieved. But yeah.
Well, resilience is certainly part of our company mission. Like it's stated, you can go on the website, like the word resilience is part of it. I think it's a part of founders' journey as well. And for, like you said, Celine, everyone needs it. And instead of just saying, this is where Anastasia gets it from, I want the people who are listening to us to think about, where do you go to when you need some support? How can you build those support systems, whether it's you spending time on your own with your hobbies or with your loved ones, with your family, with your friends, whatever it is? How can you build that support system before you really need it, so that when you need it, it's right there? I've been really privileged that with some of my friends, I actually learned from one of my closest friends when it happened, because it's this famous story that well now is covered in AFR and so on, right? In the Fast company, that I came back and I said, I think we've closed the B, and the response I heard was like, I think it's war in Ukraine. And that was the same day, the same night, the same 2 hours. And I think knowing that human who told me, well, there's a slightly different phrase, but I'm telling you a shortened version, was going to be there to support me through what's going to happen that night, and 3 months to come and the year to come, and all of those friends, and even Regrow's team in Ukraine helped with every piece and every stage. Like, how can you build those relationships and give it paid forward, so that when you need it, you can rely on it? That would be my suggestion of where that resilience comes, like feeling that you have a few people who will be there, who you're real with, who you've invested in, you've loved them, and they kind of have reasons to love you and support you and be around. I think that's what we need. And I think post-COVID business world, just has us be a lot more real, because we've seen so much pain and grief in an indiscriminate way applied to so many things in the world. And we're talking about Ukraine, but there's Iran, there's many more things that are happening that deserve attention. There's, wars happening in Africa that don't get to the news. So I think that kindness and desire to be there for each other, and just appreciating that you may not know what's going on in someone else's life. I think it's a new norm of doing business, and I think I'm very happy with that change. I encourage everyone to embrace it and build relationships at work, at home, in social lives, where they can really rely on someone or something to carry them through.
I really thank you for that reflection, and thank you for that honesty. And also thank you for the call to kindness as the new norm. I think kindness isn't weakness, and it doesn't mean that you can't say difficult things to people. It means caring for people and saying the things that need to be said, both to uplift and uphold, but also to challenge when we get things out of balance as well. And so I think that's, again, I say my reflection, you're holding true to it, is that the wisdom that is coming out of you, I think in decades to come, we will still be hearing more of these reflections about how to turn up and show up and do things differently, not just in a business sense, but how you can personally show up and do things differently, which speaks to your values, and it speaks to your integrity, and it speaks to your character, which I think, are equal measure to your success as your determination and your capabilities and your skill set and vision and all of those wonderful things. But I really see those two things go hand in hand. And I just feel so privileged every time we get to catch up. You do blow me away. So I just want to thank you. We are at time, and I want to be respectful of your time and your generosity in sharing with us today. But, I think maybe that's a call to action for all of us here, and with Anastasia, that as a community of both Cicada and Tech23, but the broader deep tech ecosystem Australia, that we can pay it forward together and do the best that we can to be kind to one another, but also to help each other achieve their goals. For me, there is nothing better than championing our founders and championing our alumni and people in the network and people that I get to see, because quite frankly, you're doing the hard yards in changing the world and changing business models and changing opportunities and doing things that are good for people, planet and prosperity in a way that I don't have the capability to do, but to be able to support in just a small way and shine a spotlight on and champion and, protect or, support in any way is just an absolute honor and a privilege. And so that's my call to action for people, is a little bit different to the one that I've got on my notes from my team about Tech23 today, but I think a real honest reflection of the character of Anastasia, our guest today, is to show up how you want to be treated and to treat each other with kindness, but to lean in and get involved and be fearless and determined in that journey, because amazing things and incredible things can happen. With that, Anastasia, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your wisdom. Thank you so much for your generosity. And thank you for doing what you're doing. And if there's anything that we can do to help you, you definitely know what my number is. Know where to find us. But we are here to support you in any way that we can in building that future, because we share that desire to see that come to fruition. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. And hopefully today, what I hope it was inspiring for some of the folks that listened and watched us. And as I said before we even started, I'm here to normalize this experience, and I will always reply to honest LinkedIn messages that say, Anastasia, I'm here on my journey. Can you just talk to me? I always will. Or connect with someone who may be even better suited for the conversation. But yeah, I think Australia has a lot to offer, and it's our duty to show back up and say, I've been there. It's hard. Let me help. Yeah.
I love that. You are literally the spirit of Tech23 and our ecosystem, and we might have to do an award this year for the alumni member that really does display that so well. So for everybody who is watching this, both now and on our YouTube later on, it is not too late to be part of this community and become an Anastasia in 7 years' time, sharing your journey and your wisdom with others. So invite you to be part of it. It costs nothing to be part of this, but hopefully we can make it not just a day and an event and an experience for you, but something that would actually be part of your ecosystem of support in the decades to come, because that's our desire, and it's a shared desire. And yeah, we'd love you to be.
As it was for mine. That's exactly how it works.
Oh my God, I don't want to let you go, but it is time to say goodbye. Mwah. As always, absolutely love you. Love what you're doing. Congratulations. Next time you're in the building, I want a big hug. There's no negotiation on that. The last thing I need to do before I hand over to the team is to just remind everybody to head on over to the website, where you can go and apply to be one of the 23. And the applications close in 24 hours. So if you're not one of the potential 23, but you know somebody, tap them on the shoulder, fill it out for them. We won't say anything. And make sure that you apply to be there, and keep an eye on the website too, because tickets will be on sale soon for you to attend. Finally, I want to thank the foundational sponsors of Cicada by Tech23, the New South Wales Government through Investment New South Wales and Tech Central in Sydney, Main Sequence Ventures, the University of Sydney, the University of Technology in Sydney, University of Queensland, UQ Ventures, Addison's, Cyro's Company Creation Team, IP Australia, Radium Capital, Third Hemisphere, CFO Plus, and really thank you for all of you today for joining us online and being part of this event. And I encourage you, be part of the community, get involved. It's an incredible ecosystem of deep tech founders here in Australia, and we want to help champion the future Anastasias to thrive and survive and go on to do amazing things for people, planet, and prosperity. Bye for now.